Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unfiltered Flow ELSC. I'm Megan Cook here with co-host Alan Burdette. And today it's our pleasure to welcome Mr. Bruce McKay to the show. Bruce has been in fluid power over 35 years and is currently the president of fluid power at Sunsource. Welcome, Bruce.
Hey, welcome. Glad to be here.
So, Bruce, tell us, how'd you get started in the fluid power industry?
Just lucky, I guess. Actually, I had a lot of hydraulics classes and physics classes, and when I was in college, and it was just something I naturally gravitated to. My professors pulled me aside and said, "Man, you really ought to talk to this company in hydraulics. You got a real knack for it." So I actually went to the electronics industry first, and then didn't really like where I was working, and saw an advertisement for the hydraulics company they were talking about at the time, and interviewed and got hired the same day that I interviewed, and that was back in 1990. So been a great ride.
Bruce, sort of leads into my question. What would you say was your favorite or most interesting project that you ever worked on?
Yeah, there's been so many of them. It'd be hard to pick one, but I guess I was just telling somebody this story the other day about back in the early 90s, we were working on simulators for the F-18 fighter program, and the simulators themselves we did a lot of work on the hydraulics and that kind of thing, but they could never really simulate the G forces. So we actually went in and put some bladders in the suit and in the seats and in the helmet, and we were controlling them at different, really tight pressures pneumatically. Some of these pressures we were controlling between zero point 0.3 and 1.2 psi. Um, to within 20,000th of a psi, which, working with pneumatics, as you know, is really tough to do with the compressibility. So doing that back then, I thought was pretty unique. And I do remember the very first time we tested it, we had a 3-star general there, and actually had a check valve backwards. Well, I didn't, but my fabrication group put in a check valve backwards on the project, and the 3-star general had the helmet on, and I saw his eyes start bulging. So I hit the e-stop and figured out what was going on. And then, so when we tested it the next time, I tested it on myself first before I wanted to make sure I lived to see another day. So, anyway, yeah, I thought it was a really interesting project, and we ended up selling a ton of those things all over the country, and really kind of neat.
Was that a full motion simulator?
Yeah, it was a full motion simulator. This part of the project was obviously just on the seats and the suit and the helmet, but yeah.
Bruce, with the advancements in smart technology and IoT, how do you see that changing the fluid power industry at this point?
I think I mean, it's a welcome change. I love it. Our customers, everything about's going on with their machine from predictive maintenance standpoint, from a troubleshooting standpoint, from they want to, in some cases, they obviously want to know the productivity of the machine. They want to know geofence it, know where it's located. Obviously, like I said, the biggest thing is getting machines back up and running quickly. And not in the past, we've always had to send people out to the machine, and now we can actually troubleshoot a lot of that virtually. So there's just so many things about the knowledge of their machine and where, how people are using it. We do a lot, with rentals now, and we can actually tell, how people, when they're renting the machine, are actually treating it and using it, and the boundaries that they're doing it within, and even just things like the safeties that are built in around, like belly boxes and things. We can actually tell when the user's looking at what they're controlling versus being distracted and looking elsewhere, and actually stop that control until they're paying attention, things like that. So it is it's providing us a lot of opportunity, and the really cool thing is, the more technology there is, the more the customers need us. And, it's not only more opportunity for us, but it increases their reliance on people like us to be able to help them integrate and support that machinery. So, it's really good.
Well, for those that are coming up in the industry and those that are in the industry looking to stay ahead, what would you say the skills and the areas of knowledge should be that these people focus on for the next 5 to 10 years?
Everything involves some type of control or app or something along those lines today. So I think that is, having some knowledge base around, those kind of things, I think is critically important. When we were first growing up, at least Alan and I were growing up in this business, I mean, all you had to know was your catalog. Now you have to have a skill set much wider than that and understand how what you're trying to promote and what you're doing affects the greater whole of the machine. So having a really well-rounded focus between mechanical, electrical, and even, process, I think is going to be really important for people to be able to impact the entire machine and the entire focus of what customers are trying to do moving forward. So I think there's going to be a need for people to dive in deep on certain subjects, but I think the really successful people in fluid power will have skills that, branch out over the entirety of kind of the technology.
Leads into my question a little bit too, Bruce. What do you see as the biggest challenge in the fluid power industry right now?
It's interesting. I think we have a lot, obviously there's a lot of, we'll call them experienced people in our industry. And I think, there's a lot of knowledge base that's going to be exiting the industry over the next several years. I think it's been interesting because there's a lot of really solid young people that we're bringing in right now. We've hired just a ton of new people over the last 5 years. It's crazy for me when I look out at the number of people we've hired, and I'm really excited because they are very curious and they're very capable. They've obviously, it's hard to replace that knowledge base and that experience. So that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, is just that knowledge transfer. I think AI is a big possibility to help with some of that. And I think the other big challenge is just the way customers want to consume knowledge and consume their products that they're using and staying current with how the customers are changing. That'll be the other really big challenge, I think.
Yeah, and you're talking about the past 5 years and hiring new folks. This is another question related to that. What do you see as your biggest hiring challenge at this point? Is it qualified candidates? Is it retention, onboarding, the time it takes to get them hired? What do you see today? That might be
Yes.
different from even 10 years ago.
I would just say yes to all those questions, but I definitely think onboarding is really a key for us, and it's something we're spending a lot of time working on. We can always get better at it, but I think the biggest challenge we've seen, we don't typically miss on the technical side with most of our hires. Where we end up missing is on the motivational piece and the maturity piece. I think there's just a difference in, some of the people today that we hire, that have, I don't want to call it entitled, but just a different sense of what their responsibilities are. I could tell you nobody held me more accountable than myself when I was, first getting in this business. And I think sometimes today we run into people that, they are waiting for us to hold them accountable. And I think that's probably a real challenge for us, is trying to understand that when we're hiring them. We do hire really great people that, they're go-getters and they get it right out of the box. And we always talk about the reins and the spurs, and I never have to talk about the spurs with these people. And those are the ones we really want to hire. I don't mind using the reins. I don't have to use the spurs. So just making sure that we're getting people that are going to really, have that internal drive to succeed. I think it's a little harder today than it's been. I think just, the way people grew up and the expectations were just different, years ago than they are today. So you just got to make sure you're picking the right ones out of the gate, because they are there for sure. Like I said, we've hired a lot of really good ones we're excited about, but that's a huge challenge for us when we're interviewing.
I've got an off the books question, I guess. There's a lot of consolidation going on in the industry right now, has been for quite some time. And the company you're currently with is a big part of that. What's your feelings about consolidation, as far as you think it's good for the industry? And if so, why?
I do think it's good. I mean, I can tell you the partners that, we've joined forces with. I mean, just what great companies, and we will not join forces with a company that doesn't share our culture and values. And so I think that's one of the reasons it's been very successful for us. I have seen, where it hasn't worked well. And I think typically where it doesn't work well, or where those two things don't align. So, before we even start getting into the numbers, we start looking at the values and the culture just for alignment before we even start looking at numbers or any of those kinds of things. So that's where I think it's good. And we also maintain, the local presence, the local name, the local, all the local cultural things. I was just up at Price Engineering the other day, and we were doing an NFPA event with 180 people for one of the local high schools. And it was, the families were involved, and there was, we had all these gift bags, and it was really just a neat event. And it's known as a Price Engineering thing, not a Sunsource thing. It's a local thing that they've been doing for years, and they've really made a name for it. And, a lot of our charities and all those kinds of things. So I do think it gives us, we try to maintain that local piece of it, but also, just being able to have the resources that we have corporately. I think it enables
Right.
some of
Yeah.
these smaller companies to be able to do things they otherwise couldn't do. So that part of it, I do think is really good. I will say, obviously these companies got to where they were by, not being part of a bigger company. So there must be something to that as well. But as you look at the resources and just everything involved with, the legal side, the financial side, all those kinds of things, I do think it lends itself pretty well to, joining forces. That's how Sunsource started as a whole was, we had 7 companies around the country that were all independent that got together all at one time. And, I think we're now up to 40 or 50 of those companies that are all joint forces. But again, we try to maintain the localization that made them special, but also, try to, use the joint benefit of us all being together to make things, to give us that power that we need.
Right.
If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It does.
Bruce, we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, so we appreciate you taking the time out and visiting with us today.
No, we appreciate it too. Thanks for all you do. You're a big part of our business and a big part of our success. So we really appreciate everything both of you do for us. So let us know if we can ever help you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce. Much appreciated.
Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Okay, we're off.